All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. It is me, OC Steve. So, thought I'd try something a little bit different, kind of in a symbiotic kind of mind and mood set. So, with that, I'm going to call this Symbiote Saturdays, where I get a little more venomous with my critiques and opinions and viewpoints. So, this is for the faint of heart. I might slip a couple, F-bombs or profanity. It is what it is. I'm just giving you an ample disclaimer. So, let's get into some of the stuff that's kind of picking at my brain in geek and pop culture at the moment. What? IGN actually gave Invincible a decent rating for once? It only had to be the very last episode of the season, but they finally hit that over 8 review threshold and finally got a 9. But even still with getting a 9, which I've mentioned previously in other videos, they're heavily jaded and opinionated when it comes to superhero material, and they don't base it on its merits. They base it just on every other piece of either media, TV, or film out there. And they're hyper critical when it comes to stuff that they can't get fringe benefits from, whether it's, obviously, in case you ever noticed, the reviews from DC and Marvel are always way higher. So they couldn't give it a 10. In my mind, being an Invincible fan, reading the source material, I thought this was the best episode out of the entire series because it was literally an adaptation of the material from the graphic novel and also taken to the next level using the ability of animation. You got to see all the stuff that was happening between the panels and the action in the pages of Invincible. Obviously, it is way more grotesque, it is way more graphic and way more violent, but Invincible has never been a series for the faint of heart to begin with. They put the disclaimers when you go on Amazon's streaming platform. They tell you it's 18 plus. It's more than just profanity. I knew that this was going to hit the benchmark. Robert Kirkman lets a lot of stuff slide when it comes to his adaptations with The Walking Dead, but I knew this was one of the few things he wasn't going to falter on so much, that he was going to stick to his guns and make sure that this pivotal point in Invincible got adapted well and got adapted to a point that he felt okay with. In fact, he has the writing credits for this episode. So tip of the hat to Robert Kirkman. But let's get into this review from IGN. Invincible's 8th episode is visually disturbing and thematically rousing season finale. It evokes haunting images of real-world disaster during its gruesome climactic battle and tells the story of what feels like to live through disaster. That's very superficial. No recognition to the development of the characters that are witnessing the conflict that's happening right between Mark, aka Invincible, and his father, Omni-Man, his dad breaking some big truths that his entire life is a lie. And it was based on this whole concocted idea that his dad sold him on once he developed powers. He wasn't even going to tell him any of this if Mark didn't actually become a full-blooded Viltrumite. He was just going to let it slide and let him lead this mundane life. And you see witnesses and flashbacks. Like, obviously, in the comic book, Mark says the line that I'll still have you, Dad, but you see the internal conflict with Omni-Man, that he's been on Earth, that obviously he is hardwired to adhere to the Viltrumite MO of conquest, but even his shallow point on Earth, as long as he has lived, has had some impact on him. And that's why even with Mark saying that, you could tell that he was holding back his punches. They allude and did little footnotes throughout the season, but this is really where it hit home. I thought it was very emotional, and it was very in attune and in service to the comic book. So with the comic book in mind, I would highly recommend right now on Amazon, whether you have Comixology or Kindle. If you have a Prime account, it is free. This episode 8 is most part based on volume 3 of Invincible, Perfect Strangers. I mentioned in a previous video about Invincible that a majority of the actual story arcs in Invincible, whether you get them in trade or collection, they're named after family sitcoms. I think there's only a handful of them that aren't. But they have Perfect Strangers, A Different World, Family Matters, Full House, goes on and on. So you can get that there. I would highly, if you enjoyed the episode as much as I did, go back and read it. Essentially, the first season is a mixture of multiple story arcs from the first 7 volumes of this series, if you get it in graphic novel format. They kind of condensed events because it just didn't make sense to revisit things twice. So even the episode with the Reanimen was 2 separate visits to Uptown University. They condensed that. It took me a while to be okay with the fact that Mark's mom, Debbie, was aware that her husband did kill the Guardians of the Globe, spoilers aside. I'm going to talk about spoilers. Whereas in the comic book, it hit home more that she had no clue that Nolan had intentionally killed everything. She is listening to the conversation as Mark and Nolan are fighting. And then for a few story lines afterwards, she's just totally shocked and destroyed and doesn't really have a purpose. She kind of goes downhill and becomes an alcoholic. They lightly allude to that, but they make her a stronger character in the series. So there's that duality where Mark is learning his powers from his dad. He is still maintaining his humanity through his mom. And even though the mom does not have powers, she is a strong beacon and kind of parental figure for Mark to show that humanity has value regardless if you have superheroes or not. And not all powers are based on strength, kind of alluding to that coin term that's in My Hero Academia. So it does set the groundwork up for the next 2 seasons. So I would say in the meanwhile, while we're waiting for the animation and the voice work to unfold, dive deep into Invincible. You're going to enjoy it. And it's going to be kind of like how when my friends and my fan friends alike read Game of Thrones, they kind of knew about the Red Wedding. There's going to be other events, big season shattering events that you're going to want to know about this series. Obviously, it's going to take some deviations because they don't have the full licensing of Image. And he has to get other creators to approve maybe some of the run-ins and cameos of other characters that live in the Image universe. So you got some time this summer. I would say read up on Invincible. But I do have a groundbreaking news update pertaining to Mortal Kombat. So let's get into that. Joshua Lawson, the guy who played Kano that I talked about in a previous video, is it Mortal Kombat or Mortal Kano, has been hospitalized for lower back pain. He practically broke his back carrying that movie. I would say Kano, no matter, I know there's a lot of mixed opinions about the Mortal Kombat movie. There's people that say the 95 film's better. There's a lot of people that just say that this movie based on its own merits is like okay at best. But the one thing that I think all of us can agree on is the fact that Joshua Lawson carried it as Kano, kind of this Deadpool-esque character, expressing thoughts and opinions and kind of breaking that fourth wall for us watching the movie, saying things that we would have normally said watching other Mortal Kombat properties. So I think he's great. I think this was his launching platform, but I think he's better suited for another role. Obviously, spoilers aside, Kano did not survive in Mortal Kombat. So what character do I think he could play in pop culture? I think he could play Lobo. Obviously not this Lobo. This Lobo was a sad, meek rendition that was in Season of Krypton, which was kind of this weird parallel Elseworlds prequel show talking about Kal-El, aka Superman's grandparents on Krypton. And they put in Lobo as kind of this very tone-deaf bounty hunter. This looks like Lobo off of steroids for several years and was hid in a cave and could never work out. Now, Joshua Lawson would be the Lobo in my mind. And this is the kind of Lobo Joshua Lawson would be. He already proved as Kano that he's unapologetic. He's going to be non-PC, and he's going to say the things that he's going to want to say. You know, obviously, I would assume without not knowing a lot about the development of Mortal Kombat, he said a lot of stuff off the cuff that, probably didn't make the cutting room floor. So hashtag release the Kano cut, if you will. But Lobo as a character was created in the 1980s. We have, our favorite mercenary, the Merc with a Mouth, Wade Wilson over here, that was developed at around the same time too. DC kind of made you can argue that one created the other, or it's a copy of this, that, or the other. But Lobo is kind of a thing on into himself when everybody was doubling down in anti-heroes in the 1980s and in the early 1990s. He is almost kind of the antithesis to Superman. He is the last of his race, whereas Superman took it as a challenge to be a beacon of hope. Lobo doesn't give two shits. He is a guy that's just there for money, booze, babes, fun, and fights. He is a mercenary for hire. He'll work for the good guys one day and the bad guys the other day. It's more about what piques his interest and what's going to make the main man work and get his payday at the end of the day. So Joshua Lawson would be perfect for this. I don't know why DC has been sitting on this property. I mean, I know they are debating doing a Deathstroke property, but what's really the point of doing a Deathstroke property? Marvel already beat you to the punch with Deadpool. So why don't you just take a full 360, if you will, and do a character that nobody's going to anticipate. In this day and age, we're so worried about being prim, proper, and PC. Why don't we have a crude, rude dude with an attitude on the main screen do a hard rated R movie about this galactic bounty hunter that only really cares about himself? Maybe he gets scorned by somebody and he gets turned on a deal, so he goes befriends some good people, but it's really not about that. Maybe Lobo could just be in the thick of it and he wants to seek revenge, and that's the only reason he's helping these people out. That's an AB easy movie, easy T-ball tee-up for DC, and actually have an R movie that lifelong DC fans would care about and actually get their butts in the seat in the theater to see. I can't tell you how many Comic-Cons I've been to, how many conventions I've been to, where Lobo is this kind of long-lost secret in the DC community that they don't talk about him, but he has a strong, huge fan base. He shows up in animated series now and then, whether it was Justice League Unlimited, Batman Brave and the Bold. He's even shown up recently in Young Justice, and there was some mini scenes at the ends of those episodes where he lost a finger. And if you know anything about Lobo, he's kind of like Wolverine, but he can regenerate a full version of himself from any piece that he loses. So, you know, they had it as a little teaser at the end if you stayed and watched through the credits. It ultimately grew up into this little baby Lobo that was showing his little baby Lobo butt, and then Lobo came back and killed him. That's always been kind of this running thing. If he loses any extremities, he has to go back and kill the copy of himself because he wants to be the only one around. So it'd be really neat to see a live action, hard rated R Lobo film being helmed by Joshua Lawson himself. Now, kind of closing, I know recently, as of yesterday, I'm recording this video as of May 1st, Disneyland here in Southern California was open to limited capacity. I think right now it's only at 25%. You got to jump through a lot of hoops to get in. You have to get into a virtual queue. You have to get approved, and then you got to pay for your passes in hopes that you get the day that you want. It sounds a lot like Comic-Con, and Comic-Con was already crazy. I remember back in the days when you could pay $20 at the door, or you could just sit at the door till the fire marshal said that they were at okay capacity. Now Disney's decided to throw that out. They got rid of the season ticket holder passes. You know, there was a lot of craziness that happened, obviously, in this last year because of COVID. So they're starting to reopen. Obviously, Florida is reopened already. So, you know, this is the main flagship park that's finally opened as of yesterday. There was a 13-month loss. But what gets me is this. You have these people that are so emotional that Disneyland's opened and they're getting some sense of normality. It's like, calm down, people. This is such a first world problem. Look, I'll guess I'll get some static because people are like, can't you just be happy for them? They just went to the park and they get to have a sense of normality and escape a little bit. You know who I'm really happy for as we scroll down from this article? I'm happy for them. I'm happy for the employees that are not furloughed. I'm happy for the employees that are not on unemployment right now. I'm also happy for the employees like my friends that live here in Orange County, California, that got to go back to work so they can get rid of some of the bills that are just slowly been stacking up over the last year, because unemployment and also does not pay every bill that you have. So they get to go back to work. They get to go back to a job. That expression of happiness says enough more to me than some little crying kid over here wearing their Mickey shirt that's just ecstatic that they get to go on Dumbo or It's a Small World. These people get to actually have purpose, go to a job that they enjoy, have a livelihood again, and are starting to get back their sense of more normality, if you will, for right now. So that's it. That's just kind of the thoughts and opinions that I had right now. So what did you think of episode 8 of Invincible? Do you agree with me that DC needs to make a Lobo film? Stop sitting on the fence. Don't give us a little appetizer and give us a hard R animated film. Don't get me wrong. I've covered before that the DC animated films are great, but enough's enough. You gave us this weak rendition of Lobo on Sci-Fi with Krypton. That wasn't good. Everybody hated it. It reminded us of that sour taste of that new 52 kind of emo-esque Lobo. We want a big, bold, rude dude with an attitude who's unapologetic, that's going to get the job done. Doesn't matter if it's good, bad, or in between. He's the guy that you need. So let's get Lobo on film. I'm happy for my friends that get to return to work for Disneyland. I don't really care about the people that are going back to the park. You're going to jump through the hoops anyway. Some of these Disney crazies would do it. There were people waiting in line to buy just Star Wars merch and Disney merch sitting in downtown Disney. So those people will always be there. But I'm happy for my friends and family that get to return to work and get to start paying some bills and get to feel better about their lives and have a little bit less stress going on right now in their household. So I hope you enjoy your weekend. Let's continue the discussion going on below. Please like, share, and subscribe my videos. This is a little labor of love, but I love to have fun because I want my geek voice to be heard in a community that is continuously canceling people that either ask questions or have opinions. So I'll catch you on the next one. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.